Let's welcome our next guest for tonight, Eva Ibiz. Eva Ibiz is from Mallorca, Spain. She is graduated in product design and just finished a master's in international cooperation and development from the University of Valencia. She has even done a research study on gender inequality in India, as well as an internship with an Indian NGO in a shelter home for women that faced domestic violence, abandoned by their husbands, and also widows in the rural settings of Ahmednagar. I request the technical team to take Eva ma'am on screen. Welcome, ma'am. The stage is open for your remarks.
Namaste. Thank you so much, Gitanjali, for this introduction. And thank you everyone for all these words. So first of all, I want to thank Jai Hind Movement for inviting me to participate on this global conversation and creating this space. And especially I want to thank Dr. Sudhir Tambe and my friends Ashok Karnar in the United States and Vivek in India for this invitation. So we all know that gender inequality is a global problem of urgent attention and that it affects every society, although its intensity varies from country to country. So I will talk about my experience in India regarding gender inequality and women empowerment strategies. During this last year, as Gitanjali said, I was working in collaboration with Lok Panchayat NGO on one of their projects in the rural setting of Ahmednagar, close to Sangamner. It is a shelter home for women who face domestic violence, widows, and women abandoned by their husbands. The aim of the project is to provide financial independence to these women through emotional and economical empowerment. So during the months I was working in the project, me and Patricia, another friend from Spain, were conducting empowerment workshops with these women, as well as living with them in the shelter home and sharing many other activities. We also did some field work with the tribal communities from Bandardara. So during this period and through further collaborations with Lok Panchayat, I also conducted my research. Thanks to Lok Panchayat's team, I could conduct it before, during, and after this pandemic, for which I need to thank them profoundly since I had to come back to Spain because of this. So the main aim of my study research was to analyze if these women were able to live an independent and violence-free life once they got financially independent and left the shelter home. But before I share with you the research results regarding women empowerment strategies, we need to go over some concepts. So first of all, I analyzed the evolution of women's status through history. As many of you might know, the early Vedic period was a golden time for women in India. During this time, women had more rights and freedom. They were free to decide on their own life, on their love life, and it didn't affect their social status if they decided not to get married. They also had more access to education and politics. But with the introduction of the Manusmriti in the Dharmasastras period, the Brahmanical patriarchy system was created, and with it, women lost all their rights and freedom. So, coming back to the present time, the rural society in Ahmednagar is organized by this Brahmanical patriarchy. This means that women in this area suffer a double discrimination due to the intersection of the caste system and the patriarchy system. Women suffer discrimination and oppression not only because of being a woman, but also because of being from a low caste. So we can see how Brahmanical patriarchy creates a structural violence against women. I also observed that despite women's rights and gender equality are contained in the legal framework and in the Indian constitution, in Ahmednagar, there's still cultural practices that discriminate women. This is because the moral codes have more influence on the social behavior than the legal framework. These moral codes are based on the patriarchal reading of Hinduism and the family's honor, which legitimize violence against women and gender inequality. In this context, women's control becomes a key mechanism to perpetuate Brahmanical patriarchy and its social structure. This control over women is implemented mainly through three channels. Firstly, the traditional role of woman based on Sita from the Ramayana, which limits women's existence to their family relationships as daughter, wife, and mother, and to the caregiving tasks and housework. Secondly, arranged marriage, and thirdly, the family structure. On one hand, the traditional role of woman is instilled in these women through their life, starting from their childhood within the family context. These women are indoctrinated in different habits that aim to silence them and make them the perfect caregivers. These women also carry the burden of morality. a morality that is based on the good woman cultural conception inspired in Sita. During my fieldwork, I could observe how these women were totally devoted to take care of their family and husband to the point that they never thought about themselves or their own needs. On the other hand, arranged marriage works as a key tool to control women's sexuality, serving the Brahmanical patriarchy goal to perpetuate its social structure. One of the main mechanisms to control women within marriage is domestic violence and violence related to dowry. Most of these women experience economical, psychological, physical, and sexual violence within marriage. Furthermore, arranged marriage generates women's family and marital dependence. This is because of the limitation arranged marriage imposes on women's access to education, economical resources, and support networks. Arranged marriage also generates the social exclusion and stigmatization of those women who live outside of marriage and the traditional role, such as single and divorced women or widows. This leads us to the family structure, which is also used as a tool to perpetuate Brahmanical patriarchy's social structure. The family structure is built onto the gender hierarchy. We can find family practice such as the preference for sons and the better access family provides to education or property to the male family members. Because of all these factors, all the women that took part in the research were living in a circle of violence and oppression perpetrated mainly by their husbands and his family, as well as sometimes by their own family. Furthermore, these women get trapped in this circle mainly because of the marital and family dependence. But another factor that prevents them to get out of this circle of violence is the deep-rooted traditional role that leads these women to justify the violence and oppression they live. Because this social structure is based on moral codes that promote and justify discrimination and violence against women, the research concludes that financial independency does not guarantee an independent and violence-free for this woman. All the interviewed women who got financially independent after leaving the shelter home could not get a rented house. All of them lived at their workplace or their family's home, and all of them stated that they were still dependent on their family's will and approval. All of them claimed that they wanted to get a house for themselves and their children where they could be independent, and they wanted also to be able to make their own decisions without needing their family's permission. We understand out of the experience of these women that Brahmanical patriarchy imposes a clear limitation to their access to a decent and sustainable housing, which is actually a basic right contained in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Because of this, we can say that Brahmanical patriarchy constitutes the violation of these women's human rights. Also, this limitation to the access of a house perpetuates the control over women and limits their freedom to decide over their own life and body. So it has been proved that the shelter home can provide emotional and financial empowerment, but it cannot provide a real opportunity of independence once these women leave the shelter home due to the social structure and its moral codes. So to conclude, this research study constitutes a diagnosis of the social context and the shelter home project, which can serve as a basis to work on a future proposal to solve this limitation and move forward towards gender equality and women's rights. This diagnosis clarifies that while emotional and financial empowerment are important strategies to move towards gender equality, they are not the only way. Financial independence is crucial, but it's not enough. It doesn't make any difference if these women are financially independent, but still they cannot decide on their own lives. So because of this, it is essential to also work towards guaranteeing a real access to decent and sustainable housing for these women, so they can articulate their own life on their own terms, free of violence and free to decide on their own bodies and lives. Finally, since the Indian government doesn't provide any solution to this limitation, as we all know, it would be interesting to propose solutions from the third sector, meaning the social movements and local NGOs, along with the support of the international cooperation if needed, to work towards these women's freedom. This could be done through projects that guarantee not only financial independence, but also the access to a decent and sustainable housing for these women. And last but not least, it is crucial to also raise awareness and sensitize the local community about this issue, about the danger of the traditional and cultural practices which attempt against these women's rights and quality of life. and the need to move towards gender equality. We need a society that values women if we want their independence and freedom to be effective. So with this, we can conclude that a profound change in the collective psyche towards gender equality is essential not only in the local community of Ahmednagar, but globally. That'll be all. Thank you all for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
इवा मॅमनी फार सुंदर समजून सांगितलं आपल्याला. त्या भारतातल्या बऱ्याच NGOsशी जॉईंट आहेत आणि त्यांनी अहमदनगरमध्ये सुद्धा अभ्यास केलेला आहे. विधवा स्त्रियांवर अभ्यास केलेला आहे. ज्या महिलांना त्यांच्या नवऱ्यांनी बाजूला टाकलेलं आहे त्यांच्यावर अभ्यास केलेला आहे. आणि इवा मॅम म्हणतात की भारतीय महिलांवर सीतेच्या याची प्रतिमा फार मनात रुजलेली आहे. तिथे बालविवाह होतात, हुंडाबळी होतो आणि त्या स्वतःच्या पायावर स्वावलंबी नाहीये. कुठेतरी आई वडिलांसाठी वगैरे त्या सर्व प्रकारची हिंसा सहन करत राहतात आणि हे कुठेतरी थांबलं पाहिजे. थँक्यू सो मच इवा मॅम.